5 new countries just joined the BRICS bloc on January 1st, 2024, but come on, that's already old news, right? So let's project the next 5 countries that could join. In this video, let's discuss the 2 major strategies that BRICS took for their current expansion and use that logic to see who could possibly be next. At the 15th annual BRICS Summit in August 2023, the 5 BRICS nations of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa came together to discuss alignment, economic strategy, and yes, BRICS expansion, which technically hasn't happened since the group invited South Africa back in 2010. At this BRICS Summit, it was announced that they wanted to invite 6 new countries to the bloc. And yes, you did hear that correctly, 6 countries and not 5. Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Argentina and their new president, Javier Milei, officially rejected the BRICS invitation. So instead, let's focus on the other 5 countries and try and figure out the strategy that BRICS used for this expansion and try and project the next 5 countries later on in the video. When looking at these 5 new BRICS countries, I see 2 obvious things that they all have in common, and the first is location. And by that, I mean it was very clear that BRICS was trying to create more of a regional balance within the bloc. With Brazil out in the middle of nowhere all by themselves, it seemed reasonable to invite another Latin American country. Obviously, that didn't work out. Then we look at South Africa, who has the weakest economy within BRICS and likely the least amount of global influence, so it made sense for Africa to gain 2 new entrants to the bloc. And with China and India being the largest economies in BRICS and 2 of the largest in the world, it made sense that no new countries were added from their specific region. The other factor to this location strategy is their actual physical location on a map and how that could benefit BRICS. This is pretty crazy. Look where these 5 countries are located: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, all in close proximity to each other, all of them except Ethiopia on the coast, making it easier for global trade, and one of them, Egypt, controlling one of the most important trade routes in the world, the Suez Canal. These waters will now be monitored by BRICS countries. Location seems important, but the next strategy seems way more important, and that is controlling the world's energy supply. With the additions of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran, BRICS will now have 6 of the top 10 oil producers in the world. This is important because oil transactions for the longest time have been tied to the US dollar. Back in the day, the US and Saudi Arabia made a deal that the United States would help protect Saudi Arabia and the region if Saudi Arabia agreed to only trade oil in the dollar, otherwise known as the petrodollar. This means that countries now needed to hold the dollar in order to make oil transactions and help provide energy for their country. This is called the dollar wallet, but countries don't always use all the dollars in their dollar wallet. So instead of having their money just sit there losing purchasing power to inflation over time, they would invest those dollars into the US stock market, making the United States an investing juggernaut. This was such a vicious cycle for countries around the world who, no matter how hard they tried, could not escape their need for the dollar. But times are changing for these countries led by BRICS, who see an opportunity to collectively reduce their need for the dollar. We are seeing it specifically in oil transactions, as Saudi Arabia has considered trading for oil with the Chinese yuan. The United Arab Emirates and India have agreed to trade for oil in their local currencies, along with many other examples of this as well. As this starts to get more momentum and more countries slowly move away from the dollar, the petrodollar will start feeling some pressure. So now that we understand the BRICS expansion strategy comes down to location, and oil. Wow, try saying that 3 times fast. Let's use the same strategy to project the next 5 countries that we could be talking about at this point next year. But before we do any of that, I make videos about world news impacting the dollar, so if you like topics like this and want to see more of them, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Here are 5 countries I think would be a great fit to join BRICS in 2025. I decided to rank each of these countries out of 10 in 3 separate categories to figure out how good of a fit they could be. Those 3 categories are oil and energy production. So basically, is this country going to help BRICS with their energy production control around the world? Location. So how is the country set up geographically, and does it make sense regionally within BRICS? And finally, their interest in joining BRICS. It takes 2 to tango, so just because they would be a good fit does not mean that they actually want to join. And at the end of the video, we'll add up all the scores and see how the countries stack up against each other. Let's start with the glaring hole in Latin America that Argentina Argentina created by declining the BRICS invitation, and a country that could easily fill that void is Venezuela. Venezuela has a good, not great oil production, currently ranked 20th in the world. They do have the highest oil reserves in the world, and they rank 7th when it comes to natural gas reserves. They have what I would call an underutilized location, being at the northern tip of South America with easy access to North America. I was kind of surprised to find out that they didn't really have a high traffic seaport, with their largest one coming in around 30th place just in South America, and they don't have a seaport that cracks the top 100 in the world. But their leadership has been pushing for a BRICS membership, and it does appear like they have the support from Brazil and China. It's also a good fit from the sense of not really being economically connected to the United States in that many ways. They've been a highly sanctioned country for years, which fits the narrative. Think about them in the same vein as Russia or Iran. All right, it's time to grade Venezuela. For their oil and energy grade, let's give them a 7. For location, let's give them a 5 with room to grow, and for their interest in joining BRICS, let's give them a 9 for a total score of 21. The next country on the list has been outwardly trying to join BRICS for the last 5+ years or so, and that country is Turkey. Their president has done many interviews expressing his interest, including one where he said BRICS should just add the T already, referring to Turkey being added to the acronym. He even went so far as having ice cream dates with Russia's president to help convince them. So we know the interest is there, but what about the other metrics? Turkey barely falls inside the top 50 in terms of oil production and outside the top 50 when it comes to natural gas. And some of their top exports include vehicles, machinery, and precious metals, but what about their location? They are in the same region of the world as the new members joining for 2024 and control the waterways leading into the Black Sea, but are otherwise relatively tucked away from being able to have a larger global influence. It's time to give out some Turkey grades. For their oil and energy grade, let's give them a 3. For location, let's give them a 6, and interest in joining BRICS, let's give them a 12. For a total score of 21. The next one on the list would see an Asian country join the bloc, Indonesia. Indonesia used to have higher crude oil exports, but that has declined over the last decade. They rank 27th in crude oil reserves and 12th in natural gas. That's not amazing, but their greatest strength is probably their location. This country, with their vast number of islands, sit a stone's throw away from the world's factory. So the majority of shipments coming from or going to China most likely will be routed through Indonesia, specifically the Malacca Strait, which is a gateway to the rest of Asia, Africa, and Europe. BRICS having more exposure in these waters could feel like a strategic advantage for them, but as far as if Indonesia wants to join BRICS, there have been some mixed signals. Leaders of the country have said it's not the right time and they don't want to rush this membership, and also that they're trying to create autonomy right now and they don't really want to tie themselves down to one economic group. So with that said, let's give out some grades. For oil and energy, let's give them a score of 5. For location, a score of 10. And interest in joining BRICS, a 5.5, since it's pretty unclear at the moment. This gives them a total score of 20.5. And let's just toss in an extra bonus point for having the 4th largest population in the world, getting them to 21.5 points. BRICS loves huge populations. Next on the list, BRICS will look to add another African country. At the end of 2022, this country has the highest GDP out of any country within Africa. Yes, higher than South Africa, Egypt, and Ethiopia. That country is Nigeria. Nigeria is 15th in the world when it comes to oil production and 16th when it comes to natural gas. And oh yeah, Nigeria has the 6th largest population in the world. As far as location, the largest economic country on the western coast of Africa, they happen to have the 4th largest seaport in the entire continent. And you'll notice the seaports ahead of them are on the eastern or southern coasts, leaving Nigeria in a perfect situation to be the entry point to Western and even Central Africa. With many expecting the African economy as a whole to explode over the next couple decades, Nigeria could be one of the largest beneficiaries. As far as their interest, their leadership said they technically did not apply for BRICS membership, which saw them get passed up for Egypt and Ethiopia, but many people expect them to join as they look to improve their foreign policy relations. All right, it's time for more grades. For Nigeria, their oil and energy production, let's give them an 8. Location, they get a 7. And interest in joining, they also get a 7, giving them a total score of 22. And sure, yeah, let's tack on a half a bonus point for their huge population to get them to 22.5. So we finally made it to the last country on the list, and it's definitely the most intriguing. Mexico. Mexico is the 13th largest oil producer in the world and 24th in natural gas. They have the 10th largest population in the world, and oh, by the way, they share a border with the largest economy in the world. Mexico has obviously benefited from being right next door to the United States. They've seen an uptick in manufacturing as companies look to move the supply chain closer to their consumer to help avoid delays. BRICS countries like China have been some of the largest investors of manufacturing in Mexico, as they share one of the largest land ports in the World Trade Bridge with the United States. Thousands of trucks pass through this bridge every day on their way to the US and Canada. And since Mexico, Canada, and the United States have a free trade agreement, it is much cheaper to send things up through Mexico than to have them shipped from the other side of the world, like China, for example. But at the end of the day, this comes down to if Mexico actually wants to join. Would joining BRICS impact their economic relationship with the United States? One would think so. Their president has been adamant that Mexico will not be joining the bloc. However, the country will have a presidential election in 2024 where a new president will be sworn into office. So maybe this person will have a different take on it. Either way, it could be a very interesting storyline in the next year. So with that said, let's give out some grades. For oil and energy, let's give them an 8. Location, they get a 10. And interest in joining, they get a 2, for a total score of 20. So let's do a quick summary of the 5 countries and see how they stack up against each other. Nigeria came in at the top of the list with 22.5 points, followed by Indonesia. Turkey and Venezuela tied with 21 points, and Mexico is last with 20. After looking at this again, the order feels pretty solid. Venezuela and Turkey feel like locks to me. I'm confident in Nigeria joining, and it all comes down to leadership decisions from Mexico and Indonesia. But now is where I want to hear from you. Let me know down in the comments which country you would have put on your list that I didn't put on mine. And if you're looking for more, I made a video about the top 10 events from 2023 impacting the dollar and BRICS, and it goes over things like BRICS expansion. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out this video here.